So, this is Thief, a very infamous game, a game with a lot of baggage right now. Reviews are really mixed. It's a reboot of a classic franchise, and because of that, there's a lot of baggage that comes with it, a lot of expectations. I personally have never played any of the previous Thieves, and I've only put in a few hours into this game so far, but there's some really interesting elements I'm seeing in the art direction, the 2D design, and a couple of things I wanted to touch on. The game's art direction is very focused. It's very atmospheric, it's really moody. The setting is basically a Victorian era city. A lot of times you're in the slums. Almost every part I've experienced has been at night. So there's always a blue hue to everything. Again, very moody, and a really nice atmosphere. The one thing I will say is that all of the locations and environments start to feel very samey after a while. The positive about that is that it kind of hammers home that mood. It really hammers home that atmosphere. You know where you are. So where Thief really succeeds is a lot of its 2D design elements seem to really reinforce the atmosphere the game's trying to create. And what that makes is a nice cohesive experience across the game. The environments, the UI, all of those elements fit together and work nicely. They feel like they're a part of a whole. And I think in that cohesive aspect, Thief is really above average and does something that a lot of games don't even seem to try to do, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. The overall concept for the 2D art seems to heavily rely on that Victorian era. The concept seems to be very much that of a printed book, early printing. The typography is a very important aspect, and it's done really well. There's a lot of attention paid to the type, the size of the type, and all of those elements. And in the end, that leads to something that feels really elegant and classical in nature. The loading screens are probably the best example of the 2D design and the overall atmosphere and art direction of the game going hand in hand. You have these really colorful still scenes taken from the world and overlaid with a really simple paragraph, but a lot of attention is paid to the size and the layout of that type, and it works together to bring you into the world. They're using a serif typeface, and a quick type lesson, serifs are the little spurred feet on letters, but more than that, they're using what's called an old-style serif typeface. To put it simply, old-style serifs are old. They're very classical, they were heavily used in early printing, and they look great in ink on a printed page. And because, we've seen them so much over the past few hundred years, they're kind of ingrained into us for us to consider them classical and for them to feel that way. And again, for the most part, it seems like some attention was paid to the proportions and sizing and pairing of this type, the headers and then the body copy in these different areas. It doesn't seem like it was ever copy and pasted or haphazardly placed. Another element used quite a bit in Thief are lines. Usually they're these 45-degree angled lines, which is kind of funny to see. It's very much a designery thing, a high-end design kind of thing. If you go and look at portfolios of recent grads or a lot of design firms, you're going to see these like artistic slashes everywhere. Definitely in kind of fashion magazines and places like that. So there's a certain elegance to them, and in Thief they're used just as that, just as an artistic element. They're most successfully used when they're used with restraint. Like when you find a new collectible item, there's just a single slash going through the type, and it's very beautiful. In other areas, though, they go a little overboard with it, and it definitely takes away some of that elegance. And it kind of ends up looking like grungy scratches almost. At that point, it just becomes visual noise. I have to wonder if the inspiration for the little element came from the focus on collectibles in the game. After all, you're a thief, you're stealing things, so there's going to be a ton of gameplay elements focusing on collectibles. You're going to have all these areas telling you you've collected 1 out of 10, 1/10 of something, and I wonder if just doing that over and over and over again in so many mock-ups for these different screens led to them pulling that slash out and using it more as an artistic element. Some other elements occasionally used are the ideas of shadow and glass. All of the menus feature a dark, smoky background with slight movement, and the loading icon is this nice little circle with a very flat kind of white flash. It's very graphic in nature. It's a nice allusion to how light and darkness are used in the game, but it's a bit more obvious. Once we get into the UI elements that you're actually using though, your health bar, the menu selection, and all of that, we tread back into typical video game territory. There's gradients, shadows, and a general lack of elegance here that seem to scar a lot of game UIs. It's weird because it feels like these sorts of elements are always pulled from Web 2.0 trends that are 10 years old. Look at the menu selection. It's a gray box with a lot of white, gradiated shadows and everything coming through it. Instead of using a serif, a simple sans serif is used. At least with that decision, they're making a clear distinction between what words are specifically UI and instructionally related and what is game and art related. but I still can't help but feel that a flat white selection box, losing the gradients and all of that, would add to overall themes of contrast, sharpness, and light and darkness seen elsewhere in the game. The in-game HUD is incredibly customizable. It lets you turn off nearly every HUD element or notification in the game. The things you'll typically be seeing are your status indicators in the lower left, your health, focus, and the light gem. The light gem is executed nicely enough while being tied to a gameplay mechanic that's been around for a while. The health and focus bars, like I mentioned a moment ago, feel completely out of place. They're basic gradients and colors look like generic website elements, and they just draw you out of the game. Not only that, they're not really useful. Each meter is a semicircle and angled, and they're different sizes. So you never really know how much health or focus you have out of how much health and focus you have at a glance. On the right, you have a gigantic display of arrows. It's your current equipped arrow and how many you have. Jesus Christ, that is a giant 4. So many other areas in the game are really elegantly done that the icons here just feel bulky and gigantic. Another HUD element you're going to be seeing a lot is the weapon wheel. It's pretty standard, and at least here the aesthetics of the wheel kind of shed those gaudy gradients seen in your health bar, and at least are a little more elegant in that they're darker, the gradients are a little more slighted, it feels a little more shadowy to go back with those other themes. On the keyboard and mouse side you have this really basic bar, and the gradient used there is different. It's not the same kind of black to gray gradient. There's a little bit of purple to it. It's a little brighter. I'm not really sure where they pulled this from, but it seems out of place as well. When you're using a keyboard and mouse, you're also often presented with keyboard shortcuts overlaid on everything. It's this bright blue color. It is very distracting and you can't miss it. To wrap things up, the menus are simple enough, although it's easy to get lost in the mess of upgrades and collectibles. Each menu contains a bunch of sub-menus, and it always took me a second to figure out where I wanted to go. One thing I did like were the chapter wrap-ups. You get a ton of statistics after you finish a level, but you also get a little pie graph telling you how you played the level, if it was more stealthy or more combat focused. The icons used here were a little obnoxious. They were a little heavy-handed like some other elements, but it was a nice feature to have, a nice little extra bit of information after a mission. So in the end, Thief is a game with a lot of varied opinions, and the UI absolutely follows that. There are some concepts and aspects of the UI and the overall 2D design that are really nice. They're executed beautifully, and conceptually, they work well with everything else, something that many games fail to do. There's also a lot of areas where Thief falls short. Things feel out of place, and in turn that leads to the whole thing feeling a little disjointed sometimes. So, those are my thoughts on Thief. Let me know what you think about this topic and any other games you'd like to see reviewed in the comments below. Thanks for watching.